Yes.
My name is Rosamund Hoffman, and I'm the daughter of Frans Hoffman. My father was a prominent Dutch banker who had always wanted to write a book about his adventures in Hollywood. He became a major player in the independent film industry during the 1980s. To help him, I started interviewing him as a labor of love. But it became for me a journey of discovery into my father's life and times.
Marker A en B cam.
Ja, ik wil wel spontaan gaan praten nu. Maar... Oh, that we do it in English, right?
Yes, we do it in English.
Okay. Are there any questions from the audience?
Well, that's very funny. Actually, I do have a question. Papa, what would you like to know about Frans Hoffman?
Oh, yeah, I think what is interesting, I think that how is it possible that a guy from a medium-sized Dutch bank, was able to invent a completely new structure for film financing, because I'm a simple banker. That's probably the only question. The rest is not interesting.
Let me tell you about the era of Frans Hoffman, if I may. You have no idea the amount of power this one man truly wielded with the wave of that finger. Well, he needed this one also
I thought
to
it was
sign
the
it.
middle finger.
No, because he had to use the both of them together to sign the thing.
He pretends he's a producer, but in fact he's a PR person.
Give you another story. I would go to his offices in Holland, and he'd have a waiting room, and the waiting room was the who's who of Hollywood. You'd sit out there, and they'd be sitting there like this, from Dino De Laurentiis to Menachem Golan to Andy and Mario who were coming over. They'd all be sitting around there waiting. We'd be like little children waiting. They would get the financing that they need. They'd get solved their problems. They walked out with the solutions.
Over a period of more than 20 years, my father financed over 900 films. He did so through 2 European banks he worked for. First Dutch Slavenbergs Bank, and later the French Crédit Lyonnais. He played an important role in the creation of films such as Superman, Platoon, and Dance with Wolves. And he was instrumental to the rise of many independent production companies like Canon, Hemdale, and Kuroko.
The 80s were a lot more fun.
Hey, can I get your autograph? I want to get your autograph. I didn't think you existed.
A very entrepreneurial, go get 'em, play things loose and fun, enjoy what you're doing. That world of the 80s, which is more about people and less about the numbers.
Without Frans, independent film would have been set back decades, if not more.
For the old timers like me that know that, it's kind of, yes, you guys are all kind of riding on this wave and great fun, but the history is interesting, which was before that it just hadn't been done.
I needed your father when he was there, someone who believes absolutely in what movies can be.
He's probably, in many ways, the best known banker in the history of Hollywood, because most people don't know who the bankers are.
Ron, give us the money.
Now it's time to tell the truth.
How much money should we give him?
We asked for 1 million, and he gave us 3.
What happened with the other two? This is probably from the 80s. Ben jij dat? Ben jij dat, Roos? Hele leuke foto's van jou hier.
Ja, inderdaad.
Geestig.
From a very young age, I developed a huge adoration for my father. There was a 50-year age difference between us. As a young girl, I never understood what he did for a living, except that he always wore a business suit, which impressed me. I remember very well that there were pictures taken on the beach in Los Angeles, where I got a sense of his importance. As I grew older, I became more and more intrigued about what he exactly did.
Hij genoot van het leven en was nog niet bepalend van wat hij wou worden. En dromen had hij altijd met films en zo, dat altijd wel.
Maar het is eigenlijk begonnen als een hobby naast zijn dagelijkse activiteiten voor de bank.
Ja, volkomen. Vanwege zijn liefde voor film en omdat hij dat gesprek met Dino begon.
By sheer coincidence, in the early 70s, I believe it was 74, I met with Dino De Laurentiis. Everything that I did in the film business, I owe to Dino. He earned his stripes already in Italy. He already had 2 Oscars. One was Knights of Cabiria and the other was La Strada. He was interested in getting a bank account, a normal, regular, current account in Amsterdam because they were in the process of setting up a foreign distribution office.
He couldn't rely anymore on the Italian banks. And that's perhaps when he met Franz and then the owner of Slavenberg Bank, and they seemed to be open to get into that business.
I said, how do you finance your pictures? How are movies being financed? And he was laughing at me. He said, well, you are a banker, aren't you? I said, yeah, well, I'm trying to play that role. He said, well, bankers never ask that question because they hate the film business. They don't want to get involved, and certainly not in the independent motion picture business. Citibank, Bank of America, no way. Of course, they had corporate accounts with the major studios, but independent producers were always turned away.
The studios used to have their cluster of writers, their cluster of directors, their cluster of stars under one roof. And they all kind of cross-collateralized their ideas, the creativity, and was very safe. They want their certain tent poles in franchise movies or the romantic comedies that are sure winners. They want to love their scripts before they make them. I mean, you know, the scripts aren't always perfect. You know, you've got to decide on something and then try to make it perfect and then go make them. And that's where your father was very important because he gave independent producers chances to make their movies.
As a commercial bank, we could not invest in films, but we could perhaps finance films. I see a film as a project, like we financed real estate. We were based in Rotterdam, so obviously shipping was a major activity of our bank. And I said, why not films? And he said, well, let's sit down and let's see if we can find a structure.
It all began with Dino saying, Franz, I'm going to teach you how to really do the film business and the foreign sales and discount contracts. And Franz had lunch with Dino practically 3 times a week for many months.
I remembered that my father, in his free time, he was very active in culture.
Frans had een hele gedegen achtergrond met een gedegen vader en moeder, zeer cultureel. Een vader die altijd bezig was met toneel en het culturele leven halen naar Zwolle.
He booked stage plays and guaranteed a certain amount of money.
Dus kaarten verkopen al van tevoren, voordat de voorstellingen nog moesten beginnen.
He thought, well, if Hamlet will be played by a major actor or Midsummer Night's Dream, I will certainly have 3 nights fully booked, and so then I can guarantee a certain amount of money. And with that in my mind, I said to Dino, couldn't we lay off the risk to the distributors in the world? There are a lot of independent distributors in every major country, and we give them a script. We tell them who are going to be in the movie, an idea about the cast. And that system was basically invented by us, by the 2 of us, Dino and myself. And that was the system of pre-sales. And in his autobiography, he describes us as the pioneers in that business.
You want to make a film, okay? So what do? Where do you start? So what you do is, step 1 is you get a script. You either write it or buy it or option it, but somehow or other you get ownership of some script. Step 2 is you want to get somebody to be attached to direct and star in it.
We maybe had our director attached to it, maybe we had an actor or 2, and that was what we call our package.
What I now do is I go down to the American film market, or I go to Cannes, and I go meet all the foreign distributors, and I say, how would you like to buy my film for your territory.
It's going to be wonderful, blah, blah, and we sell them, and they go, okay, we believe in you. We'll buy the movie today, and you'll deliver it to us 8 months from now or a year from now, and let's agree on an advance we're going to give you.
So I have a contract from the German distributor now for $1 million. They haven't paid me cash, but they have given me a binding contract.
And that contract would be called a pre-sale. And that pre-sale we would take to a banker. Who could we go to? Oh, Franz Hoffman. And we would take it to Franz, and Franz will go,
They look good. I trust the people that are going to pay. And so, yes, I will loan you the $10 million to make your film, but how do I know, Sky, that you will get the film actually completed?
So the completion bond company comes on and says, Mr. Banker, I guarantee you, don't worry, I'm an insurance company with billions of dollars behind me. If something happens and an actor dies or the director quits or for whatever reason, you don't need to worry.
And the bank then loans me the money when it's done, hopefully on time and on budget. I now say to the completion guarantor, I did my job, you're done. I now deliver the film to the foreign distributors. They pay the more than $10 million back to the bank. Hopefully I make a profit either from the amount I've sold it for is more than the cost of the film, or if the film works, I will get what's called overages, which is royalties. So that's the essence of how the pre-sale market works.
Can't remember what the first one might have been.
Were you there during 3 days of the Condor?
Oh, that's good, yeah. It was 3 days of the Condor, and what it really was is the tax shelter group set up an account at Slavenberg's bank, and Franz helped us do it, so it wasn't very expensive for us.
Robert Redford and Faye Dunaway in danger and in love in 3 days of the Condor.
My bank had absolutely no idea about film financing. So they said, are you sure that we get our money back? I said, well, sure. You can never be sure. There's always a risk. But I have a good feeling. I think the distributors, I checked them out. I think they really have the intention to pay us once the picture is delivered.
Ze vonden het een onbegrijpelijk gebeuren. Ze begrepen hem niet, maar Frans had al zijn sporen verdiend. Dus ze hadden vertrouwen.
My feeling was not so much about whether the film would be a great success, because actually that was nice. That was the icing on the cake. But the purpose of the loan was to get the money back.
He had the intelligence to use Dino, I mean really use, to Dino's full acceptance and agreement to teach him what he should do and what he should be careful about.
Dino is heel bepalend voor je vader geweest, omdat het een hele belangrijke, bijna een soort vaderfiguur voor hem was, die hem leidde. Die zei wat hij moest doen, welke wegen hij moest bewandelen, wie hij moest ontmoeten.
The times that they were together were so important that they were together because they were making things happen. And you have this euphoria when you are making movies. You're creating. And Franz felt that too because he was part of that process. This business is very seductive. So they shared that. Franz understood that passion.
They were very close, very believed in each other. I think Franz might have looked up to him. Dino never looked down on Franz.
But the big one was in 1976 when he did King Kong with Dino. The studios, they paid attention to it. This model can bring big ticket movies that we don't have to finance. So it's a tremendous risk management. The studios needed product. With King Kong, they go, oh, this really works. We'll take a distribution fee, and Dino and Franz Hoffman can take all the risk.
That was a major film for that time. And that was a very expensive movie. We completely financed that movie. And during production, the cost went up from 18 to $24 million. All in all, that film made a bonanza. Not that we benefited from it. We were very happy with an interest margin, and a closing fee, and that was it. So maybe we made 3% on the budget.
After working with Dino for 3 years, my father had mastered the ins and outs of the movie business. Dino then offered him a job as his private banker, but my father respectfully declined. He wanted to stay at Slavenberg's bank while discovering Hollywood for himself. Dino was disappointed, but understood his decision. While Dino remained his main client, my father started to work with other producers.
Mr. Franz Hoffman, in relation to the other people who work in the bank business for movie, he have one great quality. He have the feeling about the movie. I am not surprised if one day, tomorrow, Mr. Franz Hoffman resigns from the bank and become producer. Because our business is tough business. You must love it to do well.
Now, wouldn't that beat all get out? Well,
The first project my father worked on, without Dino, would turn out to be very complicated. Unknowingly, Slavenberg's bank had become involved in a film project called Superman.
Superman is an interesting story. I got a call from the president of the bank, and he said, you have to come immediately to Rotterdam, to the head office. We need to see you. I said, my goodness, have I done something wrong? He said, no, but we need you. He said, but I have meetings today, and I cannot cancel my meeting. He said, you have to cancel all the meetings. It's very urgent, you come to Rotterdam. So I arrive in Rotterdam. The whole board is sitting there, I never forget, in the boardroom. All faces, very long faces. And I go, my God, what's going on here? And he said, yeah, we just discovered that we are financing Superman.
A man by the name of Alexander Salkind was planning to produce a Superman picture. He found a bank officer in the small village of Zutphen in the Netherlands, and that officer had authority to advance up to I think it was $100,000. When the bank examiners came to look at Slavenberg's, they found that Mr. Salkind had borrowed, I believe, $32 million.
We were in shock because we didn't know about it. We didn't know. It was small amounts. It was with a subsidiary of the bank. And so they all were looking at me and said, are you going to solve that? I said, how far are we with the production? Well, we are somewhere midway. So I went to London. The picture was shot at Pinewood. All the producers got together, the Salkinds and Pierre Spengler. And I said, we have to go on. And there's no other solution.
Franz, with his expertise in filmmaking and all that, came on board and said, no, wait a minute, we're not going to leave that in the subsidiary, we're going to take it over with Slavenberg. And this was the first really, let's say, official encounter between Franz and ourselves. They resolved a lot of uncertainties that we had.
Very crucial was the screening, because I asked Pierre, show me the stuff, show me the material that has been shot so far. And I brought Dino in, Dino Laurentiis. We saw maybe an hour of material, and Dino pinched me in the arm. He said, it's good stuff, Frans, it's very good stuff. And that also was part of my decision to move on.
Papa was in het begin natuurlijk veel meer bewogen met de film dan later. Later werd veel meer financieringen. En in het begin was hij echt, dan wilde hij weten wie erin meedeed, hoe de set was, wat geluid was, wat licht was hij ontzettend geïnteresseerd. En tijdens Superman werd in Londen opgenomen. Toen logeerde hij met Dino. Dan ging hij gewoon naar die studio's en kijken. Toen was het echt zo van, gaat Superman vliegen, ja of nee? Dus op een avond belde hij, Superman, hij kan vliegen, hij vliegt.
Somebody thought it was a great idea that Superman would restore the White House that was badly damaged by the bad guys.
Good afternoon, Mr. President. Sorry I've been away so long. I won't let you down again.
And you needed another 250, I remember, another $250,000. And I said, if this helps the film, we have to do it.
So Superman 1 was released, was a huge success. At that time, immediately, I started working on finishing Superman 2.
A guy named Marlon Brando, an actor of some note, a guy named Dick Donner, a director of some note, had sued Alex Salkind for not receiving the monies they should have received on Superman 1 and Superman 2. He turned out to make 2 movies when he was supposed to be making 1.
They were pretty slippery, these guys. And what they had done, and they didn't inform the cast or anybody, but they shot a lot of footage. And they had enough footage from the Superman to do Superman 2.
So my goal was to get in and make sure the plaintiffs got their money, knowing it was going to be very difficult to get much out of Alex and his companies and people.
Your father said very sternly, I will make sure that every penny that is lent to you will go into the film and not into anybody's pocket.
Eventually, when Superman 2 came out, it was again a big success. And there we finally were able to sit down, make the accounts and say, okay, now we're able to pay all the participations, start repaying the bank, and it all worked out.
Wij scheelden 10 jaar. Ik was nogal een wild type. Dat vond hij heel interessant. Hij was vrolijke Frans. Een zeer vrolijke Frans. Een gezellige, Bourgondische Frans. Heel intelligent. Hij genoot van alles, maar hij was wel serieus. Serieus in zijn contacten. En hij heeft heel vroeg al met zijn ouders heel bewust ook die oorlog meegemaakt. De onderdrukking die heel moeilijk voor hem was. Het niet vrij zijn. Het vrij zijn was voor papa, het vrij zijn van denken, dat waren dingen waar je vader heel, heel erg mee bezig was. Ik denk dat dat bepalend is voor zijn hele leven geweest. Eerlijkheid, oprechtheid, trouw.
After solving all the problems with Superman, the board of the bank encouraged my father to expand the film business at Slavenbergs. While building his clientele, a lot of independent producers came to Rotterdam to seek financing for their movies.
And I remember when I came in, everybody was running around. And I said, what happened? And there was some sort of a foreclosure or something that was taking place. Nobody was there. I had this interview, and I think Franz wasn't there. There was some sort of a problem, and I said, what's going on over here?
What happened was that the Dutch tax authority had raided the bank because they suspected it of money laundering. All of the senior management were taken into custody, including my father. Even though he came out clean, he had to stay home during further investigations.
Je man wordt weggehaald, er wordt in een autootje gestopt. En die zie je 10 dagen niet. Het zijn hele nare dingen geweest. En het feit dat er werd aangekeken dat hij iets onrechtmatigs had gedaan. Denk aan Tweede Wereldoorlog. Hè? Hij had iets onrechtmatigs gedaan. Dat werd verweten door vrienden, familie, kennissen, wat dan ook. Heeft hem ongelooflijk aangegrepen.
En waar was ik toen?
Jij bent bewust, heel bewust op stapel gezet. In de 3 maanden dat papa thuis zat. Heel bewust, door mij. Papa was heel depressief. Wat niet in zijn karakter was. Wat eigenlijk totaal niet bij hem stond. En 's avonds zei hij van, ik weet niet of ik langer moet leven. Ik kan dit niet tegenover de jongetjes. Hun vader heeft gezeten. Alle berichten zijn tegen mij, terwijl ik er niks mee te maken heb. Ik ben met een filmdivisie bezig en ik ben allerlei andere dingen in het buitenland aan het doen. En ik heb niks met het binnenland te maken. Maar toen flap ik eruit. Je kan mij dat niet aandoen, want je wordt vader.
My mother told me that I was conceived during a very difficult time. It was quite a big thing for me to learn while making this documentary. I'm the youngest in the family, and I have 3 older brothers. I did not quite understand why my mother made that decision if you already have 3 children. But I guess she hoped for a little girl to soften my father's feelings. This helped me understand my adoration for him.
Ik denk dat deze zaak van Slavenberg hem eigenlijk zijn carrière heeft gegeven. Zo van, dit is mij aangedaan, ik ben onschuldig, en heeft zich toen volkomen op dit filmgebeuren gericht. En het buitenland.
When in 1983, Crédit Lyonnais acquired Slavenbergs Bank, the French management learned about my father's activities in the film industry. They liked the business and saw a lot of potential for growth. So they asked my father to completely focus on film financing. With their support, he put together his own team and created an entertainment division.
It required a level of knowledge of the distribution community and how it worked and where the movies worked that was just simply not there. Franz had that knowledge and would basically created a business that became, huge, billions of dollars, by the 90s.
Action!
The same kind of excitement that my father felt by working with Dino De Laurentiis, he found in Israeli filmmakers Yoram Globus and Menachem Golan. Their enthusiasm and dedication were so stimulating to my father that it became one of his most productive partnerships.
A producer must get everything that the movie needs. Yes. No way out.
Goedenavond.
Goedenavond, ja.
Oh, you have learned to speak Dutch.
A few words. Geld.
And then we got from you, I think, a line of $4 or $5 million to do the small action movies.
I tried for a low budget that we did low budget movies to make a film look big. I was always scared of you because you are the big man. Big Franz Hauptmann. Yoram knew how to speak to you. I was quiet. But I was making the movies and...
He was quiet? What's going on here?
Franz, we will go into it, that he was quiet.
What about this stupid fire? Again! It's very much.
You are an officer today. You are an officer today. Next month you will not be an officer. Don't make me angry. I will shoot when I want. You can arrest me.
Menachem en Yoram waren familie. Ik kende hun vrouwen, hun eerste vrouw, hun tweede vrouw, de vriendinnen tussendoor. Ik kende ze allemaal. En het waren heel imponerende gekken.
Menachem did the ninja. Invented the ninja movies.
If you take on a ninja, no matter how many you are, be prepared for the consequences. Enter the ninja from Canon.
He was in Philippines, and then it was Credit Lyonnais already. And then the Philippines wanted to kill him, the people, for $50,000 that he owed them.
I owed, yes.
What shall we do? What shall we do? I call Franz in the middle of the night, and Franz tells me, come to Rotterdam. Yeah. That's how it was. We sat in Rotterdam, I think for one day we planned, and instead of 50, we got a line of $25 million. And that's how we started to do The Wicked Lady, The Championship Season, Sahara, the first upgrade movies of Canon.
First movies with stars, real stars.
I always wanted to learn. I want to learn more and more and more. Because I've always said to my boss in the bank, Georges Vigon, the moment that I have to defend a credit facility, and I tell you, George, that you should trust me because I know the business, you have a free mandate to fire me on the spot.
Franz got a special permission from Credit Lyonnais to join the Canon Group board of directors as an independent board. Your suggestion, your ideas were always, I accepted them, and you're a very smart man.
There are a couple of Israelis here who would probably steal their thunder and sell it back to them at a profit. Golan and Globus may sound like a couple of Middle East cities, but they are...
For many years, they were the king of the independents. They were so prominent during the Cannes Film Festival, their parties, their pictures. They made wonderful pictures.
Yet all this media promoting your film for essentially free. I thought Canon made some good films. Barfly still holds up today.
I can't stand people. I hate them.
Oh, yeah?
You hate them?
No, but I seem to feel better when they're not around.
We had a feeling that when you bring a star to Cannes, You capture the buyers.
I'll do the movie, because they couldn't pay me a lot of money. I said, okay, but I want a Rolls Royce. He says, okay, I'll give you a Rolls Royce.
And we bought him the Rolls Royce. What don't you do for this stuff? And he came to Cannes, and it was a big success.
So I thought he gave it to me for real. So at the end of the movie, some guys come and said, we're taking the Rolls. Legendary story. I enjoyed having coffee with Franz or a drink much more than Menachem. I like, a very classy, elegant guy. Menachem always had like gefilte fish and all kinds of things all over his shirt. I could tell what Menachem had for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on his red shirt with his white suspenders. But this guy was a class act.
Somewhere in the 80s, they came to see me and said, Franz, all these movies, but what about the movie theaters? I said, yeah, seems to be a problem, because video became so important that there was less attendance in the movie theaters, and many so-called experts decided that this was the end of the movie theaters. I helped them with the acquisition of the Gaumont Theater in Italy. I helped them with the acquisition of a couple of theater chains in the United Kingdom, and eventually I was able to assist them with the acquisition of the famous Tuschinski theater chain here in Holland. As well as the city theaters.
Everybody said the unions in the Netherlands are terrible and you will go bankrupt in 6 months. And we said in 12 months, all the theaters in the big cities will be ours. And that's what we did.
You fixed it.
And they asked us, first of all, we said that we believe in the cinemas, in the future of cinemas. As long as there is use, cinemas will exist. Then they ask us, what are you doing to the cinema? You remember our answer?
Just clean the toilets, first of all. Once the toilets are clean, it begins. Then you change the carpets and you change the chair. Did you ever sit in Tuschinski 1 on a chair lately? Impossible to sit. It's like this. You can't put your knees. No. And we are changing those chairs because I understand that Tuschinski is an historical place. Doesn't mean that you cannot sit on a chair.
From the director of Chinatown and Tess, Roman Polanski. Polanski's epic adventure.
For Pirates, my father had high expectations because of the great reputation of director Roman Polanski. The movie was shot on location in Tunisia and starred Walter Matthau.
It was Roman Polanski's pet project. And Tarak Ben-Ammar, the producer, couldn't control him apparently, so he was not moving. And Tarak said, there's very little I can do, but maybe you can do something because you have the right to remove him from the project and replace him by another director. And we had done that before with Superman. We had replaced Richard Donner by Richard Lester. I went to Tunisia to meet with Polanski, and apparently my chairman also joined me. We had a lot of money at stake.
Roman Polanski moest af en toe van zijn bed gelicht worden door papa. Zat hij weer te rommelen met een 17-jarige. Vreselijk. In Tunesië gingen we met vakantie. Dat was gewoon omdat hij daar moest werken. En het gezin ging mee. Dus jullie waren er allemaal. Jij begon te leren lopen. En Walter Matthau, dat was een enige man. Een enige man met een grote baard vanwege de rol in The Pirate. Hij klopte bij mij 's avonds laat en hij zei... Jouw zonen hebben weer mijn cola voor de deur weggestolen. Kan je die misschien terugzetten? En papa vond dat enig, dat soort privécontacten. En de volgende dag ging hij weer naar de set toe. En dan werd er weer niet gedraaid, want Roman Polanski was niet aanwezig.
Then finally we completed the picture, but it was a terrible picture. I remember the film was shown at the Directors Guild in Los Angeles for a selected group of people. And they all loved Polanski because of Chinatown and Rosemary's Baby and what have you, men of great reputation. And of course, Roman Polanski was allowed to enter the United States only to serve time there because of his affair with that young girl in 1977. So there was a video message from Paris that he was greeting everybody and all his admirers, etc. And during the film, I felt already an atmosphere. They were uneasy. And then when the film ended, there was dead silence. People couldn't believe that Polanski had made such a terrible movie.
Het is een film geweest die heel weinig mensen hebben willen zien.
Maar dat betekent niet dat de bank eraan verliest. Hè? Dat heb ik wel eens eerder gezegd. Wij financieren dat zo dat we niet afhankelijk zijn van het bezoek.
To understand the importance of my father's accomplishments, I wanted to personally meet the people he worked with. I went to interview many of his colleagues, like John Miller, the banker at JP Morgan Chase, who finances many of the blockbuster movies for the major studios.
He looked at this business in a way that would be very difficult today, because I think he trusted somebody, he got to know them, he made a lot of decisions, I think, based on his instincts about who he was doing business with.
I was making a film, and the film ran out of money. It was called Never Too Young to Die, and we were just about to start shooting, or we were shooting, and I was in trouble. So I remember, I went, oh, Franz Hoffman, I gotta call Franz. So I called him up, and he said, the prodigal son comes back. And I explained to him the situation. He says, give me your bank account number. I said, really? He says, yes, I trust you. How much money do you need? And I needed $500,000 at that time. He said, I'm going to wire transfer you that money. He says, and we're going to do the paperwork after. He says, because I'm going to take you at your word.
Everybody who got a major credit facility had to appear in front of my board. And we had lunch in Rotterdam and dinner if necessary, etc. We treated them well, but they had to come to Rotterdam. And one of the producers once said in an interview for television, he said, Rotterdam was coming and going of famous producers, and they all had to sit on the couch till they were asked to come in, and if you got the handshake, then it was okay, and that's not how we worked, of course not.
As you know, Franz he loves wine. He's a great authority on wine. So we were discussing the next pictures, and Franz spoke to the two board members and said, right, let's make a bet. He bet that they did not know the original 5 Grand Cru wines from France, and they were 2 Frenchmen. So it was a matter of honor. Over dinner, Franz won the bet, and they agreed to finance the next 2 pictures. Of course, I took it with a pinch of salt, went to the office the next day. They presented to me the note signed by the 2 board members that those pictures would be financed. Those 2 next pictures were Hoosiers and Platoon.
He took a far more creative approach to the business. He was interested in the content. He was interested in and was willing to take the risk, because he could read the script, understand who the director was, who the producer was, who was starring in the movies, and he was willing to take a far higher level of risk than an American bank would have taken, and he did it well.
Domestic banks were less comfortable with those foreign distributors. They had more regulatory requirements. They were not as flexible as the European banks, and specifically Credit Lyonnais, and that, I think, is what allowed France to dominate in those days, because the American banks couldn't compete.
The first picture that we did with Franz was The Terminator, the James Cameron and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And Franz was very instrumental in bringing that together, because he would guarantee Arnold Schwarzenegger's fee, which I think at that time was relatively small by today's standards, about $1 million. But it had to be put forward and a guarantee before the picture was financed.
Franz Hoffman and Credit Lyonnais have had a financial hand in a wide variety of pictures. Among them, Hemdale film's smash hit, The Terminator. Hemdale's president, John Daly.
I think his biggest contribution was with Terminator. None of that would have been possible had Franz not supported us. Extremely loyal to people that do business with him. And in fact, he's almost a father figure.
Franz was very savvy, and he understood what it meant, and he was looking beyond just a single picture. He was looking to help the principals of Hemdale build a company, build a library, because the library became very, very successful and it became valuable.
Why do you think the independent film industry was dominated by companies that were run by foreigners, like Canon, Hemdale, and Kuroko?
Well, I think this is a melting pot. You know, America's a melting pot, and Hollywood is the center of the film industry, or Los Angeles is the center. So it's natural that everybody from abroad gravitates towards America because the actors were here, the directors were here, so naturally we were all here.
They did not work well within a studio bureaucracy. I mean, visually, when you look at these people, you look at Mario and Andy, they don't look like people you'd see in a studio.
Our philosophy was that we want to give the independent market the same kind of movies that the major studios were releasing. And in fact, it turned out that they were beating them with our movies. So our goal was really not to compete with Cannon or Hamdale, but was to compete with the major studios.
Zij zijn begonnen met die hoge salarissen te betalen, niet alleen aan regisseurs, maar voornamelijk aan acteurs, zoals Michael Douglas en Stallone en Schwarzenegger.
And Hollywood blames us for destroying the prices, even though that isn't true, because they're the ones that destroyed it. The studios paid less money up front, but they gave each star a big backhand, a percentage of the gross.
Dus in plaats van Arnold die misschien 5, 6 miljoen kreeg, boden ze 10, 12 of 15.
So consequently, if a picture was really successful, Carolco was better off. If the picture was not a success, then of course Carolco was worse off.
I remember in particular there was one transaction at Carolco where they committed to a $3 million script literally on the back of a napkin.
Het ging eigenlijk heel simpel in de zin van, hallo, we hebben Robocop gezien en we hebben een script en we denken aan jou. En als je het dan gelezen hebt, laten we even bellen, want dan gaan we even wat dineren met Arnold, want die speelt de hoofdrol. En dan kunnen we allemaal handjes schudden en dan weten we dat we morgen kunnen beginnen. Zo ging dat.
It was the Wild West. It was truly independent filmmaking.
So you definitely saw with certain members of the independent world, it's like, enjoy it now because it's not going to last forever. So they were much more liquid, how they entertained, and they were having fun.
Jachten in Cannes, de ene groter dan de andere, uitgebreide parties in Vegas, heel de dag de Carolco, weet je. En zoiets, dat had natuurlijk een dubbele functie, maar het was natuurlijk ook heel leuk.
Het kon allemaal niet op. En duizenden mensen bij de ingangen om naar binnen te gaan. Allerlei sterren en die er natuurlijk waanzinnig uitzagen. Want die tijd was... je weet de popgroepen uit die tijd, ABBA. Nou, zo zagen we er ook allemaal uit. Van die Pat Elefant broeken, die broeken van onder.
Hey, en waarom werden die feesten zo groots gegeven?
PR. Gewone ouderwetse PR. Het zien van de sterren, het aanraken, het imponerende ervan.
We had the party of parties. It had an unbelievable collection of talent, all working with one independent company, all right, financed by Credit Lyonnais. We had Schwarzenegger, we had Stallone, we had Michael Douglas, we had Sharon Stone, Jim Cameron and Oliver Stone.
Come on, I want you to come on, Fred. I want you to get something. The party was great.
What was on the menu?
I don't remember the food. I really don't remember the food. We drank. We had a great band. The Gypsy Kings played.
I don't think we'll ever have a case where an independent company can have the #1 worldwide grossers back to back like we did in those days.
Hello, Tony.
Hi.
How are you?
We talked to you just about the Cannes Film Festival. Is it important for you to be here to meet with your clients?
Always,
Yes.
always, yes. Already for 16, 17 years, I come out every year basically to learn, because this is the place where distributors, exhibitors, producers meet each other and do deals. And we like to know in what financial condition everybody is, so we talk to all the foreign distributors in the world.
Unlike most bankers, he knew all of the distributors around the world. Franz could get on the phones himself and call Tohotoa or Gaga or whatever it was and help solve problems. He was very proactive. If there was a problem that was taking place on a loan, and there's always problems with everything, he was there. He was by its side. He was part of the solution going on. He was involved literally in everybody's business in a good way.
We got to make that picture specifically because of your father. At a certain point, the bank, through the French lenders, had lent too much money to Hemdale. And Frans and I came up with this deal where we bought the library rights to those Hemdale titles for $40 million, and we had to put back for 10. When, as expected, Hemdale defaulted on paying back the 10, I went to Frans and said, we have to levy on this on the sequel rights.
We made Terminator for $6.5 million. Terminator 2 was made for close to $120 million.
I've always wanted to see the frontier.
You want to see the frontier?
Yes, sir. Before it's gone.
There ain't nothing here, Lieutenant.
What about Indians?
We approached all the American studios, from Paramount to Universal to Fox, you name them. And everybody had basically 4 reasons to decline.
I was very honest about what it would be. I knew it would be long. That didn't mean I thought it would be boring, but I knew that it would be long. I knew that there would be subtitles.
The American studios in those days, well, they still are. They're very nervous of subtitles. They don't want to release subtitle movies.
I knew that those subtitles were important, that 2 people could not talk.
They didn't want to back a first-time director.
I mean, everybody has been a first-time director once in his life. Okay, no, we don't like him as a director. Okay. Reason number 3 not to do the movie was, it was too long. 3 hours and 20 minutes.
The reason that's a problem is you lose a screening every day, so you're losing money just because of the length of the film.
And the number 4 reason, it was about cowboys and Indians, basically.
And so this very American movie would not be financed by anybody here.
We have no American deal. Let's first start with the foreign contract. Let's see if there's interest. And we were just lucky because that same summer, The Untouchable had come out. The Untouchables was a great movie with Bob De Niro and Kevin Costner. And Kevin Costner was brilliant in that movie. So everybody who hadn't heard of Kevin Costner knew that The Untouchables was a great movie. Guy said, it's unbelievable. We get offers from everywhere, from Japan, from the Far East, from Europe, from Latin America. I think we can cover 60% of the budget out of foreign pre-sales. It's unbelievable.
We went to the markets, we made the sales, and the cash started flowing.
We went to the studio and said, listen, foreign people are already so interested in foreign distributors about this project, Dancing with Wolves, that I think I'm surprised that not one American studio has picked it up.
Even though it's independent production and the money was being provided by the banks, you needed the studio's distribution arm, their print and advertising money. You needed them behind you.
$9 million was raised by the European community, and I'll forever be thankful for that. Once Hollywood realized I was going to go make this movie, interest kind of started to grow a little bit. But I went to a studio that I had been familiar with, Orion, and they gave me $4 million. It took Europe to move the dial for me.
And action. Scotty!
I used to go to South Dakota and watch them where they were shooting. Kevin used to rent the local cinema every night, and everybody from the set could go and watch the dailies, which is incredibly unusual. And then when you saw the stampedes and things like that, and Kevin did all the stunts himself, he went out on horseback and he rode in the middle of hundreds and hundreds of buffalo. I mean, he could easily have been killed.
There was a lot of people who were laughing behind my back about it. Lucky for me, I was out there making it, and I was unaware that there was this kind of skepticism, this cynicism with me directing a movie.
The movie was a massive success. We collected an enormous, many millions of dollars in overages. It was nominated for I believe, 12 nominations, and it won 9 Oscars, including Best Director and Best Film.
You know, I think when you're in the movie, sometimes the hair on your arm can stand up, in the back of your neck. Sometimes you can't stop a smile. Those are the emotions that I believe in when the curtain opens up and the lights go out and the movie starts.
So Frans changed our lives by helping us make the movie, and the movie changed our lives because it was so successful. It changed all our lives.
Zijn gaan naar Amerika en het daar zijn en daar 100% zijn, moest je natuurlijk zijn gezin en zijn kinderen Noem het verwaarlozen.
En hoe was dat voor jou?
Moeilijk. Moeilijk. Hij zat 9 maanden per jaar zat hij in Amerika. Met natuurlijk heel veel weekends over en af en toe dagen door de week. Maar dan was hij thuis en dan was het stil. Papa heeft een jetlag.
Although he traveled a lot while I was growing up, I never missed my father. He was always there when it mattered. And furthermore, I didn't know any better.
Cannes Filmfestival deden we samen. Gingen we een maand daar naartoe met een au pair. Dus dat was een maand met de kinderen. Kinderen kregen speciaal huiswerk mee van school. Dan hadden we nog de maanden extra vakantie in Amerika. Dus dan zaten we niet 2,5, soms 3 maanden. Dus dat namen we bij elkaar, zagen we elkaar, maar daar werkte hij. Dus op die manier hebben we er een modus voor gevonden die niet makkelijk was. Want af en toe moest ik daar naartoe.
At what age do you become self-aware? For me, it was our time in Malibu when I was 3, 4, and 5 years old. Those are my first memories, and it made a huge impression on me. During the summers, we joined my father in Los Angeles. We would arrive at LAX airport. 2 stretched limousines would be waiting for us, one for our family and another for our luggage. We were chauffeured to the luxurious Malibu beach house, where we enjoyed a private tennis court, a swimming pool, and a jacuzzi. On weekdays, we were picked up by a yellow school bus to go to a summer camp in Topanga Canyon, where we could ride horses, play sports, and do other fun activities. Our playmates were the kids of Dustin Hoffman. Bruce Willis and Demi Moore were our neighbors. There was always a lot going on. Stars would walk in and out the house. It was a special and magical time a little girl can only dream of.
People say I'm the life of the party 'cause I tell a joke or two. Although I might be laughing loud and howdy, deep inside I'm blue.
Platoon was enormous success. And that one really knocked the industry on its ass because here we are, a $5.8 million movie shooting in the Philippines with no actors, no stars that no one knew of. And we pulled it off.
Oliver had served in Vietnam during the war, so he knew what he was talking about. And this was a very serious project, but not everybody was interested, especially not in America. You needed, apart from the foreign distributors, you really needed a deal with an American studio.
It's all about your script. If your script is good, you're going to get it done. First, I read 50 pages in my office, and I called Oliver. I said, I'm doing a movie. He says, not so fast. Go home and read the script, and then call me tomorrow. My wife and I were in bed together. She was reading a magazine. I started reading. I was nailed to this story. When I finished, I was sobbing. I had tears in my eyes.
We were trying to get the most difficult shots in the most difficult manner possible. In the rain, special effects, no big budgets, nothing. It was just a struggle from day to day.
It was the first real look how people were getting limbs blown off, dying, and the stress of what war was like. And I think that hit a nerve here. They had never seen anything like this. They were used to the John Wayne type of movies, where it was all about America and America being triumphant. It wasn't real. This was real because Oliver had been in Vietnam under 2 tours of duty.
The moment we cut the movie, we showed it. It took off. There was a fire to it. I can't tell you. That is really about populist timing and sense of we hit the right moment in time, that button.
So we released it in 6 theaters, 2 in LA, 2 in New York, and 2 in Toronto on opening weekend, which was in December of 1986.
And we'd see veterans standing in a line around the blocks in New York and LA trying to get in, and The letters, the outpouring, the media, which is also the most cynical of all, was like puppy dogs, in our laps looking for stories.
There was a line that ran for 2 blocks, and I see all of these people, and I had no idea that it was for our movie. And as I drove up, we realized that it was all for Platoon.
The nominees for Best Picture are...
In the year 1986, the films Credit Leone had financed received 27 nominations and won 8 of them. This was much more than any studio achieved that year.
And the winner is Platoon.
Thank you very much. I am deeply grateful. My profound thanks to John Daly and Derek Gibson for sharing my passion when all others passed. And Franz Hoffman of Credit Lyonnais for having the money in the Philippine jungle when I really needed it.
It was every banker's dream after that the winner of the Best Picture of the Academy Award would mention their bank. It's the only time I've ever heard a producer thank its bank for anything.
Dat dan ook inderdaad je naam wordt genoemd. Had papa het idee dat hij zijn eigen Oscar-hop haalde. Ja.
Was hij aanwezig?
Ja, wij waren zeker aanwezig. Pontificaal zaten we daar. Nou, het is ongelooflijk. Ik weet nog precies, de jurk die ik aan had, die besloeg een koffer. En dat er dan gezegd wordt, the man who brought the money to the jungle, dat had hij niet verwacht.
It was a slight exaggeration because I never went to the set. I never went to the Philippines. But we just transferred the money from Rotterdam to a local bank in Manila.
He had that Dutch confidence. They very convincing. And as a banker, I thought he was the godsend.
I was just a kid from Ohio, and I didn't really have any experience with European style or personality. And Franz is an example of, what I'll call an old school, style. He had his emotions, he had things that would upset him, but, he was always so careful and polite.
I always wondered when he would sleep with your mother if he would take the suit off. I used to kid him about it. And he would laugh, give me a nervous laugh.
I remember going to the Cannes Film Festival and walking down the Croisette when Franz was there. He was more famous than most of the movie stars.
Hello, Franz. How are you, Franz? People that were obviously sucking up to him. He was a target. He was the best game in town.
Nice to see that you're alive and you're here. I'm here. That kicks me in
Hij was ijdel. Was wel ijdel. En hij vond het meer dan heerlijk. Hij genoot.
De sterren.
De sterren. En bepaalde sterren die zijn naam kenden, die naar hem toe gingen.
Some of the movie stars Franz was very friendly with because he was the banker for the people that used them, like Sly Stallone, for example. He loved it. He loved the experiences of interacting with everybody, whether it be movie stars to just business guys.
And I think everybody respected him and they liked him. They especially liked him when he used to walk around the Hotel du Cap with a briefcase full of cash. Especially Golden Globus, when they got money from him, they said, by the way, we want our money in cash.
A lot of the companies were colorful characters, and his great quote that he said was, if you're going to swim in the ocean, you better swim with the sharks. And he knew how to deal with them and use their wisdom of the film industry to his advantage to make sure that his film loans got repaid.
Hij was heel degelijk qua opvoeding, maar hij vond het risico van het filmgebeuren vond hij spannend. Spannend was het. Kuifje. Kuifje.
How many times he turned to me and said, I wouldn't lend this guy 10 cents, Buckley, but we'll drink his champagne. I said, okay.
With all the success my father had, it was rumored that some clients paid him money on the side. Besides this, to let him keep working during the summer, he was provided with a beach house for our family. Later in the industry, it was said that he was bribed.
Is taking a summer beach house a bribe? Yes, technically it is.
It's funny. The word bribery is a tough word to use, I would say. But all bankers at that time, and I think some to this day today too, probably have perks. All of my bankers would come to the King Games. I'd buy them dinners, various things. We didn't view it as a bribery. They were friends.
Franz's take was that this is the way things are done in Hollywood. It's a way for me to keep an eye on the money. Whether it fit the rules of Credit Lyonnais, Frans said it did.
Dat is niet alleen hoe die is, sociaal gezien, of die leuk kan dansen. Dat is ook eigenlijk wat er om hem heen hangt, dat hij met zich meebrengt, nietwaar? En dat koop je gewoon. Als je komt en je bent datgene wat je zegt, ja, dan denkt iedereen, kom binnen. En hij had heel wat te bieden, toch?
I cannot accept any gift from any client, and I can't give any gift to any client. But I'm invited all the time to go on people's yachts and to do things. If I went, I would report it, and my institution would allow me to do that, and I wouldn't consider it a bribe.
It wasn't hidden or secret or running around doing clandestine things, or Frans saying, if you don't give me this house, the loans are going to get called.
Bruce McNall had promised me some financial reports. And he did arrive at the party, and he handed a brown envelope to me in front of 150 people that were standing there. And guess what was in the envelope? His financial reports. And later on they invented that probably, I don't know, $100,000 or $200,000 in cash. And you think that I would be stupid if I would ever be bribed, that I would accept the bribe in front of 150 people at a reception. You think I'm that stupid?
The productive partnership between Cannon and my father was put to the test when Yoram and Menachem wanted to expand and diversify Cannon more than my father was willing to finance. When they failed to listen to his arguments, my father decided to stop financing them and resigned from their boards. Not long afterwards, they were close to bankruptcy and in desperate need of money.
They made a tremendous amount of movies out of their studios on Sunset. Saw a chance to get out, to cash out, and they cashed out to Peretti. And God love him for it.
During the Cannes Film Festival, I was asked by Yoram Robles and Menachem Golan to come to their suite, and they wanted me to meet a certain Mr. Peretti. And from the first moment on, I understood that this man was not going to be a friend of mine, because he shouted at me when I came into the room, and he was pointing his finger at me and said, "You, Afman, how much money you make in the bank?" And I said, "It's none of your business." "I triple it. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Yeah, you come inside my company." And I said, "But then I would have to leave the bank." "No, it's not necessary. You stay in the bank at the same time you work for me." I said, "Okay, nonsense."
Peretti basically tries to bribe Frans right there in the meeting, right? And of course, Frans very politely, okay, I understand that.
He was talking about 400 million he was going to put into the Cannon Group. I said, "Fine, you can pay off some of the loans that we had made to the Cannon Group." And he said, "No, but you have to loan it to me." I went outside and said, "Yoram, you come with me." I said, "Look, it's very simple. I dislike this man immensely, so I'm not going to work with him. So you have to go to another bank. I don't want to be involved." And so we went back into the room. And then I told him, "Mr. Peretti, there's nothing I can do for you." And then he became very, very angry. He said, "Well, I'm going to talk to your boss, George Vigon. He is in Rotterdam, and I'm going to fly out with my private plane, and you will lose your job."
I was representing Cannon at the time, and this crazy little Italian showed up and said he wanted to buy Cannon, and asked him some questions. He knew nothing about the industry. He knew nothing about financing. It was just hilarious. This guy showed up, and so I literally got up from the meeting and I said, I have long meetings and I have short meetings. This is going to be a short meeting because you don't know what you're doing. So I left.
I found out that indeed my chairman, whom I admired because of his intelligence and his support for my business, had entered into a relationship with Mr. Peretti. My second in command said to me, "Frans, we have something to report to you." I said, "Okay, what's going on?" He said, "Well, we are already 400 million out on the Peretti and Fiorini companies." I said, I don't know, why I'm not supposed to know this, I'm responsible. I said, "Well, the chairman of the bank took the responsibility and we had to execute the orders." And I immediately went straight to the officer of Vigon and said, what's going on? I mean, I know nothing about it. He said, yeah, it's my responsibility. I said, yeah, but it's my people you're using.
Fiorini and Peretti have been bribing all the way to the top of Credit Lyonnais from Abarrero on down, all right, including the Socialist Party kingpins, we later learned. And I know that, this was something that, would drive your father crazy, because every bit of integrity that he cared about, every sense of people that he cared about, and he told the bank not to do it.
Peretti, with Credit Lyonnais' help, ended up buying Canon. So I had to deal with him until then Peretti fired me as counsel for Canon because I had walked out of the meeting with him. And then I was hired by Credit Lyonnais to oversee the subsequent investment, which was Canon buying MGM.
Buying Canon was not enough for Giancarlo Peretti. On the contrary, it was just the beginning. And he had his eyes set on something much bigger. His next target was one of the oldest and largest studios in Hollywood, Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, better known as MGM.
Here comes Peretti, boulders into town with money bags. Well, Dino's eyes go big. You know what? This guy wants to buy MGM. He wants to buy something he wants to buy. Let me show him around. This guy looks serious.
Hij zag dat goede mensen als Dino en de Credit Lyonnais en andere mensen gewoon, Nachem, Joram, allemaal achter deze man aanliepen. Deze man had iets van de ordinaire ober tot de machtige contacten die hij had, was een hele platte man.
We spent a lot of time together. We traveled together. We vacationed together. He actually is the godfather to Carolina. He was the best man at our wedding. So, immediately Dino was seduced and there was this partnership.
Dino came to him and said, Franz, you got to stop being against Peretti. This is bad for you and the bank. And he said, I'm never going to stop being against Peretti. I know what he is.
Vreselijk heeft hij het gevonden. Heel, heel naar. Ja, omdat hij zichzelf als een hele goede vriend, als een familielid van deze mensen zag.
It is a business that is so pressurized and so capital driven that whoever helped you 10 years ago might be your friend, but your best friend is the one that's helping you today.
I saw with great sadness that a lot of my account managers were all of a sudden working exclusively on the Peretti and the Fiorini accounts, and to the detriment of our other relationships that we had with companies like Hemdale and Corolco, and you name them, our other major clients. And I thought the whole structure that we had erected for the entertainment business, it was going to fall apart. And that was the day that I resigned from the bank, voluntarily, totally voluntarily. And Vigon said, well, you have to stay on till the 1st of July, and then you'll become a consultant to the board. They didn't want to lose me. I say that in a little arrogant way, but it was the absolute truth.
Franz bowed out, but he nominally stayed involved because Canon was his major client, so they had a lot of existing films going on.
And I see this all the time in industries where a banker will stay as a consultant for a few years to work out troubled loans because he has the personal relationships with those people at the highest level of the companies that he's dealing with.
Maybe I shouldn't have done it. Maybe I shouldn't have stayed on as a consultant. Everybody was leaving. My whole team was going to other banks, or people took early retirement, or people started to work for clients. I had 12 account managers and only one stayed with the bank, with the entertainment division. So Credit Lyonnais ended up with no knowledge about the entertainment business anymore, because all the knowledge had gone. Then some French people came and they took it over. It's one of the major disappointments in my life as a banker for the film industry, which I always consider to be a labor of love, and I've done it with passion, and I never had anything to do with crooks and thugs, etc. I walked away from them.
The attention that Peretti brought in was just totally out of whack, and it folded, I think, within 2 or 3 years. I mean, he burned through the money, and he basically hopped on a plane and got the hell out of Dodge and kind of left the wreckage behind him.
Jacques Lang, who was the culture minister at the request of the President of the Republic, called Abarrero and said, you give Fiorini and Peretti whatever they want. All right, that's why it happened. And then they tried to dump it all off on the Dutch branch, try to make it seem as if, oh, it's some film stuff by Franz Hoffman. They tried to blame him for it. But I remember the way I don't know how I would have handled something that unjust and that terrible and outrageous, but he handled it with the same aplomb and sense of humor and character that he did everything else, just took it. And, he and I would always joke, we're gonna have to write the book one day, and which we never did, because we both knew what really happened.
This is Hollywood, and memories are short. So for those of us who were around then, it can still be a hot button. Today, people will just look at you with a puzzled thing, go, but that was a mess, wasn't it? And you just say, yeah, that was a mess. And you just move on.
After my father left the bank in 1991, there was a lack of finance for a while in Hollywood. The independent producers had to find other sources of capital.
They went out and raised money publicly. They over-levered themselves. They started to get into the exhibition business. They went way beyond their core competency in many cases.
Hemdale had financed back-to-back Academy Award-winning Best Pictures for Platoon, which cost $5.8 million and did $136 million at the U.S. box office, and Last Emperor, which they paid $8 million for domestic rights alone, and it did $42 million at the U.S. box office. And guess what? Company lost money on both.
Their accounting methods were abhorrent. And you talk about most of them, not all of them, but most of them had a luxurious lifestyle for their owner.
The debt that I had was growing and growing and growing. It ended for me when in 1994 I received a subpoena, basically requesting documents and information from the FBI. It's not a good thing you want to get, by the way. It's not a good thing to have. Immediately, all of my entities were put into a bankruptcy, which included Gladden Entertainment. I went from 2 helicopters, 3 jets, mansions all over the place, to living in a small apartment.
Die mini-studio's zijn verdwenen. Ze zijn allemaal bankrupt. Orion is bankrupt, Carolco is bankrupt en tal van anderen. Je kon geen kleine films maken die 15, 20 miljoen kosten, waar dan niks aan verdiend werd. Nee, alleen maar verloren. Maar als je er 6 zo maakt, dan ben je ook 100 miljoen kwijt. En daar was dus het succes van Basic Instinct en Cliffhanger en al die en Rambo 2 en 3 enzovoorts. Was niet voldoende om te compenseren voor zoveel diversiteit.
The companies that went out of business eventually didn't have your father behind them. I think that if your father would have continued, he would have found ways to help all these companies. I think what happens, businesses go like this. And and in the tough times, you need good bankers and people to understand and help you get through those time periods. He was gone. And it was very simple. Pay the money or you're out of business. And it doesn't quite work like that. Sometimes they can't come up with the money on this date. Another great one is John Miller. John has supported many companies who could have gone under, and he didn't. He found ways to help them and find solutions, which your father always did.
Banks have become more corporate, since Wall Street days. They seem to roll over bigger amounts of money, like they make studio loans. Unfortunately, the studios get stronger. But you don't have the Franz Hoffmans that are out there who are backing individual filmmakers.
Your father was unafraid. He had good sense. He had to make good choices. But he did, and some of the men and women around him, I'm sure, thought long and hard. But they bet on a person who had never, in my case, ever made a movie.
He built some of the greatest production/sales companies in the business. He helped create that whole independent business, which still runs till today.
No one took his place. No one had the goods. They didn't know how to do it.
He was old-fashioned. Old-fashioned in the sense that whatever I can do to help you, I will. And I will support you, and I will be there in really difficult times.
Franz actually changed my life entirely from being an employee to enabling me to be an owner, which I've been ever since for the last 25 years. He was totally changed my life. Yes, he was, more than influential. He literally changed my life.
What happened to you after?
I got many offers and from banks. I became an independent consultant. I worked for a number of banks, European, Japanese banks that I advised, and they thought that I had still a very good reputation. For me, it was sort of postgraduate in the film business.
Ik heb het totaal niet als een afgang gezien. Ik vond het een heel moedig besluit. Ik vond het een heel fijn besluit, want ik kwam weer naar Nederland. En ik zag dat zijn karakter veranderde. Hij was minder vechterig. En natuurlijk ook zijn leeftijd gebonden.
Zodra je eigenlijk niet meer te bieden hebt wat je oorspronkelijk te bieden had, dan ben je eigenlijk persona non grata. Dan laat ze je gewoon vallen en dan kijken ze naar de volgende. Dat is wel een beetje de situatie hier, hoor.
He accepted the cycles of business. I had my time. The world's changed, you know? And he was educated enough that he was too close to the Credit Lyonnais scandal to not be affected by it.
I think it's like a Greek hero. You peak and then you go down. He peaked. I mean, it's better to have peaked than never to have peaked at all.
De laatste jaren, als ik dan ging ik wel eens eten hè, met hem of een borrel drinken en dat soort dingen. Maar het leuk was, hij had altijd zo'n boekje bij zich. En dan zei ik, dan vertelde ik hem welke mensen ik zo goed vond in Nederland. Nietwaar? Dat was dan de editor en de cameraman. Of zelfs acteurs en actrices die ik had gedacht, moet je eens kijken, die is goed en zo. Dan zat hij dat altijd met een pennetje op te schrijven.
From time to time, I realize that I have to clean up things and that I don't leave a total mess for my kids that they have to sort out. So I have to throw away a lot of things. The cleaning up time has to start very, very soon. I realize that.
Toen ik hoorde dat hij ongeneeslijk ziek was en er niet heel veel tijd meer voor hem restte, ben ik naar Nederland gekomen, want ik woonde in New York. Ik wist dat hij een boek wilde schrijven, maar hij heeft nooit echt de tijd ervoor genomen om daarvoor te zitten.
Ja, schat, ik ga proberen nog een paar maanden aan vast te knopen, want het is zo belangrijk dat er helemaal niet staat. Ik heb nog geen tijd meer, denk ik.
Dus ik besloot met mijn cameraploeg toentertijd te gaan filmen.
Ja, wel een betere omgeving.
Ja, dat vind ik ook.
Forming bonds, forming friendships. And one of the best friendships I ever stumbled into was so sorry about him passing away. Little emotional. I loved your father.
La vérité, c'est l'amour. De waarheid is de waarheid, de enige waarheid bedoelt. Dus de waarheid is de dood. En dat het was voor mij een geweldige schok. Dat die man die zo bruisend was, altijd bij mij in ieder geval, en zo vol leven enzovoorts, dat ineens echt vrij snel natuurlijk. Hè? De oneerlijkheid van deze situaties, daar wou ik ook graag het hele universum in betrekken, nietwaar?
Ja, maar gelukkig heeft hij wel iets moois kunnen achterlaten.
Ja, jou.
Dan ga je van huilen. Dankjewel.
Ik heb er ook moeite mee. Als jij huilt.
Dankjewel, meneer Verhoeven. Oeh. Misschien een mooi eind dit.
Ja, denk het ook. Ja. Ja, nee. Existentiële problemen.
diep in mijn hart. Kan ik niet boos zijn op jou, blijf ik je toch altijd trouw. Dat mag je heus wel weten, diep in mijn hart is er maar één, dat ben jij. Jij bent toch alles voor mij, zul je dat nooit vergeten, want jij bent heus niet slecht. Wat ook een ander van je zegt. Lieveling, denk toch eens aan samen het leven te gaan. Draag dan je liefde voortaan diep in mijn hart.